Hello, I'm Jack Sullivan. The gravel popped under my tires as I rolled into the driveway of Mom's old brick house in Warren, Michigan on Easter Sunday, April 3rd, 2025. I'd made the 2-hour haul from Pontiac in my '98 Ford F-150, the one with the dented fender and a tailgate that rattled like a tin can in the wind. In the passenger seat sat a brand new set of gardening tools, pruners, a trowel, a little hand rake, all wrapped in a green plastic case with a bow I tied myself. Cost me $80 at Lowe's, but I figured it'd light up Mom's face. She'd been hinting about sprucing up her flower beds for months, ever since the arthritis in her knees started acting up. I even dug out my blue flannel shirt from the back of the closet, the one she used to say made me look like my dad in his better days. Easter was supposed to be sacred, ham, hymns, and family. I thought maybe this year I'd get a seat at the table without feeling like a stray dog begging for scraps. Turns out I was dead wrong. I cut the engine, grabbed the tools, and stepped out into the crisp April air. The sun hung low, painting the sky orange over the sagging roof Mom swore she'd fix someday. I could smell the hickory smoke from the grill out back, hear the kids shrieking as they tore through the yard hunting eggs. It was the kind of scene you'd see on a postcard, the kind that made you think everything was right with the world. Then I saw Eddie's new Chevy Silverado parked like a king across two spots, its chrome rims glinting like it was daring me to say something. My little brother always had a way of taking up more space than he deserved. I climbed the porch steps, boots thudding on the warped wood, and rang the bell. The door swung open just enough for Eddie to stick his head out. At 45, he still had that linebacker build, but the years of beer and bad decisions had softened him around the middle. His brown eyes narrowed and a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Jack," he said like he was spitting out a bad taste. "What are you doing here?" I shifted the tools to my left hand, forcing a grin. "It's Easter, Eddie. Thought I'd drop by, see Mom join the party. Brought her something for the garden." He didn't budge, just leaned against the frame, arms crossed, like a bouncer at some dive bar. "Yeah, well, we didn't invite you. It's a small thing this year. Family only." The words hit me like a sucker punch, but I kept my feet planted. "Family only?" I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Last I checked, I'm still a Sullivan. What's this about?" From inside, I caught the clink of glasses, Uncle Pete's hoarse chuckle, and the high-pitched chatter of Eddie's kids. Then Mom shuffled into view behind him, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, apron smeared with gravy stains. She didn't meet my eyes, just stared at the floorboards, hands twisting the hem of her skirt. "Jack," she mumbled, voice thin as a thread. "Eddie's right. It's not a good day for all this. We just want it peaceful, you know?" "Peaceful?" I echoed, louder than I meant to. The tools felt heavy in my grip, like they were mocking me now. "You're telling me I drove 2 hours, spent my Sunday, and I'm not welcome because it's not peaceful? What the hell does that even mean, Mom?" Eddie stepped forward, chest puffed out. "It means you don't fit, man. You never have. Always stomping around, stirring shit up. We don't need that today." I locked eyes with him, my jaw tightening. "Stirring shit up? You mean like when I sent Mom $300 last month so the bank wouldn't take this house? Or when I bailed your ass out of that $5,000 poker debt so Lisa wouldn't leave you? That kind of stirring?" Mom flinched, but Eddie didn't blink. "That's ancient history, Jack. Doesn't buy you a ticket in here. Go home. Sleep it off, or whatever you do these days." I glanced past him, caught a glimpse of Lisa in the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, blonde hair teased high, sipping a glass of white wine. Her lips curled into a smirk, and she raised the glass like she was toasting my exit. The kids ran by, oblivious, clutching plastic eggs, while Uncle Pete belted out, "Where's the damn bourbon?" from the living room. It was all so normal, so alive, except for me, standing there like a ghost they'd already buried. "Mom," I said softer now, giving her one last shot, "you gonna let him talk for you? I'm your son, not some stranger off the street." She finally looked up, eyes watery but cold. "Eddie thinks it's best, Jack. And I agree. You've been gone a long time. Things are different now." "Different," I repeated, tasting the word like rust. "Right, different." I turned on my heel, boots pounding the porch louder than necessary, and headed back to the truck. The tools landed in the bed with a clang, and I slid into the driver's seat, slamming the door hard enough to shake the frame. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, as the hum of the party faded behind me. I could have busted back in there, demanded answers, made a scene they'd talk about for years, but something else clicked instead. A cold, hard certainty I hadn't felt in a long time. I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, and scrolled to the recurring payment. $300 to Margaret Sullivan every 15th of the month, like clockwork for the past 3 years. My thumb hovered over the screen, then pressed cancel. A pop-up asked, "Are you sure?" I hit yes without a second thought. The confirmation flashed. Payment canceled successfully. I stared at it, waiting for guilt to creep in. It didn't. All I felt was a spark, sharp and bright, like striking a match in the dark. I started the engine, the old Ford rumbling to life, and peeled out of the driveway, gravel spitting behind me. In the rear view, I saw Eddie step onto the porch, watching me go, probably thinking he'd won. Let him think that. Let them all think they'd cut me loose. They had no idea what was coming. The hum of the highway stretched out ahead of me as I pointed the F-150 back toward Pontiac. The orange glow of Mom's house shrinking in the rear view until it was just a speck swallowed by the dusk. My hands stayed tight on the wheel, the calluses on my palms digging into the cracked leather. I'd canceled that $300 payment not 10 minutes ago, and the silence in the cab felt heavier than it should have, like the quiet after a gunshot. I didn't turn on the radio, didn't want some twangy country song telling me how to feel. I just drove, letting the road unspool the years I'd spent hauling this family on my back, only to get kicked to the curb like a rusted muffler. 30 years ago, I was a different man. At 22, I had big plans. Save up, open a garage of my own, maybe call it Sullivan's Fix-It. I'd spent my teens under the hood of Dad's old Chevy Impala, learning every bolt and spark plug by feel. He'd clap me on the shoulder, grinning through his cigarette smoke, and say, "Jack, you've got hands for this. Don't let them go to waste." But Dad dropped dead of a heart attack at 54, right in the middle of a Tigers game on the TV, and those plans went up in smoke faster than his Pall Malls. Mom was a wreck after that, crying into her coffee every morning, bills piling up like dirty laundry. Eddie was just 15, all skinny legs and attitude, flunking algebra and sneaking beers from the fridge. Someone had to step up. That someone was me. I took a job at Big Al's auto shop, wrenching on strangers' cars for $8 an hour, 12-hour shifts that left my boots caked in grease and my spine screaming. Every paycheck got split 3 ways. Half to Mom for the mortgage, a chunk to Eddie's school supplies, and whatever was left for me, usually enough for a 6-pack and a burger. I didn't complain. Figured that's what a man does, holds it together when the world falls apart. Eddie graduated high school, barely, and I was there in the stands, clapping louder than anyone, thinking maybe I'd done something right. Mom even hugged me that day, her bony arms trembling, and whispered, "You're my rock, Jack." Funny how words like that can turn to ash in your mouth years later. Fast forward to 2005. I was 32, still at Big Al's, still dreaming about that garage, but too buried in bills to make it real. Eddie was 25, fresh off a stint at community college, and he'd met Lisa, a bottle blonde cashier with a laugh like a car alarm and a habit of spending money he didn't have. They got hitched 6 months later, and I footed the bill for the reception. $2,000 for a tacky hall in Sterling Heights, complete with a DJ who played Sweet Caroline 3 times. Mom said it was my duty as the big brother. Eddie said I was a sucker. He wasn't wrong. Things shifted after that. Eddie started calling me less unless he needed something. First, it was $500 for a busted transmission, then $1,200 when Lisa totaled their Pontiac Sunfire. I'd wire the cash, no questions, because Mom would call me late at night, voice shaky, saying, "He's your brother, Jack. He's all we've got." Then came the poker debt, $5,000 he owed some lowlife in Detroit after a bad run at the tables. I drove down there myself, handed over the envelope, and told the guy to keep his goons off Eddie's ass. My brother didn't even say thanks, just slapped my back and said, "You're a lifesaver, man," like I'd lent him a lawnmower, not my life savings. I shook my head, pulling myself back to the present. The dashboard clock blinked 6:47 p.m. My stomach growled, but I wasn't stopping. Not yet. I kept seeing Eddie's smirk on that porch, Mom's downcast eyes, Lisa's wine glass raised like a middle finger. 30 years of busting my hump, and they turned me into a punchline. But there was more to it, something gnawing at me deeper than the insult. Eddie hadn't just shut me out. He'd taken over. The way Mom deferred to him, the way Lisa egged him on, it wasn't random. They'd built a wall, and I wasn't just outside it. I was the damn foundation they'd buried to keep it standing. I flicked on the headlights as the sky darkened, the beams cutting through the haze. Back in 2018, I'd gotten married myself. Jenny, a quiet brunette who worked at the DMV. We lasted 4 years before she walked out, tired of my long hours and short temper. No kids, no alimony, just a divorce decree and a trailer full of regrets. Eddie loved rubbing that in my face. "You're a lone wolf, Jack," he'd say, grinning over a beer at Thanksgiving. "Good thing you've got us." Mom would nod, like it was gospel, and I'd swallow the bile because what else could I do? They were all I had left, until today, when they decided I wasn't even that. The phone buzzed in my pocket, snapping me out of it. I fished it out, expecting Mom's name, maybe a half-assed apology. Instead, it was a text from Eddie. "Nice stunt, canceling the payment. Real mature. Mom's freaking out now, thanks to you." I stared at the screen, my pulse kicking up. Freaking out? Good. Let her feel something for once. I typed back, "She'll live. You've got that fancy truck. Sell it if she's so broke." I hit send, tossed the phone onto the seat, and cranked the wheel toward a gas station off I-75. Time to refuel, and not just the truck. Inside the dingy mobile, I grabbed a coffee, black, no sugar, and leaned against the counter while the clerk rang up a pack of smokes I didn't need. The TV above the register flickered with a news clip about Easter egg hunts in Detroit. Kids laughing in bunny costumes. I almost smirked. My Easter hunt was over, and the prize was a big fat nothing. But as I sipped the burnt coffee, a memory hit me. Something Eddie said last summer offhand about fixing up the old lot. The lot, Dad's land, a scrubby half-acre out by Lake Street. Claire we'd bought together in '95 to keep the bank off Mom's back. I'd chipped in $10,000 of my own cash for that deed. Eddie swore we'd never sell it, so why'd he bring it up? I paid the clerk, stepped outside and lit a cigarette, the smoke curling into the night. That lot wasn't just dirt, it was the last piece of Dad I had left. If Eddie was messing with it, this wasn't just about Easter. It was personal. I stubbed out the cigarette half-smoked and climbed back into the truck. Tomorrow I'd call Tommy, an old buddy from Big Al's who worked real estate now. If there was a trail, I'd find it. And if Eddie thought he could erase me that easy, he was about to learn what happens when you kick a man who's already down. The Monday after Easter, I woke up to a gray sky, spitting rain over Pontiac, the kind of weather that makes you want to stay in bed and forget the world. But I wasn't in the mood for forgetting. Not after Eddie's text, not after Mom's silence, and damn sure not after that nagging itch about Dad's old lot by Lake Street. Claire. I rolled out of the sagging mattress in my trailer, pulled on a pair of jeans stiff with yesterday's grease, and brewed a pot of coffee strong enough to strip paint. By 7:30 a.m., I had Tommy on the phone, his voice crackling through the line like he was still half asleep. "Jack, you're up early," he grumbled, a former gearhead turned real estate grunt who traded wrenches for a tie. "What's this about a property?" "Need a favor," I said, cutting to it. "My family's got a half-acre out by the lake. Bought it with Dad back in '95. I put 10 grand into it myself. Eddie mentioned fixing it up last year, but I've got a bad feeling. Can you check if it's still in Mom's name?" Tommy grunted, the sound of a keyboard clacking in the background. "Give me a day. I'll dig through the county records. You think he's screwing you?" "I don't think," I said, staring at the steam curling off my mug. "I know." I hung up and spent the morning pacing the trailer, the linoleum creaking under my boots. That lot wasn't just land, it was a promise. Dad had dragged me out there on weekends, the two of us clearing brush with a rusty machete, talking about building a cabin someday. "A man needs a place to stand, Jack," he'd said, wiping sweat off his brow. "This is ours." When he died, I made sure Mom kept it, even when the bank came sniffing around her mortgage. 10 grand was every dime I'd scraped together from overtime at Big Al's. Handed over without a second thought. Eddie was still a kid then, too busy chasing girls to care. So how the hell did he figure it was his to mess with? By noon, Tommy called back. "You sitting down, Jack? 'Cause you're not gonna like this." "Spit it out," I said, my gut already twisting. "Deed's gone. Sold 3 months ago. January 15th, 2025. Cash deal, $20,000. Your mom signed it over to some LLC out of Lansing. No record of the money hitting her accounts, though. I'd bet my left nut Eddie's got his paws on it." I gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. 20 grand? That's it. That land's worth double with the lakefront. "Market's soft," Tommy said. "Or someone got a steal. You want me to pull the LLC docs? Might tell us who's behind it." "Yeah," I growled. "Do it. And send me the sale papers." I slammed the phone down and kicked the leg of my coffee table, sending an old Car and Driver magazine skidding across the floor. 20 grand. Eddie hadn't just sold it. He'd sold it cheap, and I'd bet my truck he'd pocketed every cent. Mom's signature on the deed didn't mean squat. She'd sign her own obituary if Eddie told her it'd keep the peace. I could see him now, spinning some sob story about fixing up the house, Lisa nodding along with her fake tears while they laughed all the way to the bank. I grabbed my keys and headed back to Warren, the rain pelting the windshield like it was trying to talk me out of it. I didn't care. I needed answers, and I wasn't waiting for Tommy's paperwork to get them. The truck roared into Mom's driveway just past 1 p.m. Eddie's Silverado gone, probably off showing it off to his buddies. I banged on the door, hard enough to rattle the frame, until Mom cracked it open, her face pale under the porch light. "Jack," she said, clutching her cardigan. "What's wrong?" "Tell me about the lot," I said, voice low but sharp. "The one by the lake. You sold it, didn't you?" Her eyes darted away, hands trembling. "Eddie said it was for the best. The taxes were piling up and—" "Taxes?" I cut her off, stepping closer. "I paid those every year, Mom. 10 grand from me, remember? Where's the money from the sale?" She shrank back, lips quivering. "Eddie handled it. He said it'd go to the house, fix the roof." "Bullshit," I snapped. "He sold it for 20 grand and kept it. You let him rob us blind and you didn't even tell me?" "Jack, don't," she pleaded, tears welling up. "He's your brother. He wouldn't—" "Wouldn't what? Screw me over? He already did, Mom, and you signed off on it." I turned to go, but her voice stopped me cold. "You don't understand, Jack. Eddie needs it more. You're strong. You always have been. He's not like you." I spun back, staring her down. "Strong? You think that's a compliment? I've been strong so you two could lean on me till I break. Well, I'm done." She reached out, but I was already halfway to the truck, the rain soaking my flannel. I slid behind the wheel, my pulse hammering, and dialed Eddie. Straight to voicemail. "Coward. You've got one chance to come clean," I said after the beep. "Call me back or I'm digging deeper. And trust me, you won't like what I find." I hung up, the anger boiling over into something colder, sharper. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect, about Dad's memory, about every drop of sweat I'd poured into this family only to have it spat back in my face. Tommy's LLC papers would come tomorrow, but I already knew what they'd show. Eddie's fingerprints all over this mess. And when I had proof, I wasn't just cutting checks. I was cutting ties. Next Sunday, they'd all be at St. Mary's for the Easter service, smiling for the neighbors like nothing happened. That's when I'd hit them where it hurt, right in front of God and everybody. Let me know what you'd do if your own blood sold you out. Drop a comment below. The rain had stopped by Sunday, April 10th, leaving the air damp and heavy as I pulled into the parking lot of St. Mary's in Warren. The old stone church loomed ahead, its steeple cutting a sharp line against the pale sky. I'd been up half the night, Tommy's LLC papers spread across my kitchen table like a map to Eddie's betrayal. The sale of Dad's lot traced straight to a shell company tied to my brother's name. Proof he'd cashed out $20,000 and left Mom in the dark. I folded the documents into my jacket, grabbed a cheap handheld mic I'd borrowed from Big Al's, and stepped out of the truck. Today wasn't about Easter hymns or forgiveness. It was about settling a score. Inside, the pews were packed with familiar faces. Neighbors, cousins, the whole Sullivan clan dressed in their Sunday best. Mom sat near the front, her gray bun bobbing as she whispered to Eddie. He slouched beside her, tie crooked, smirking at something Lisa said. She perched on his other side, her red lipstick stark against the white blouse, clutching a hymnal like a prop. The priest droned on about resurrection, but I wasn't here for sermons. I waited until the collection plate passed, then stood, boots thudding on the hardwood as I walked to the aisle. "Folks," I said, flicking on the mic, my voice booming through the sanctuary. Heads turned, murmurs rippling like wind through dry grass. "I've got something to say. Won't take long." Eddie's smirk vanished. Mom's eyes widened, hands clutching her purse. Lisa hissed something under her breath, but I didn't flinch. I pulled the papers from my jacket, holding them up like a flag. "This is the deed to Dad's lot by Lake Street. Claire. I put $10,000 into it to keep this family afloat. 3 months ago, Eddie sold it for 20 grand. Cash deal, no taxes, no trace. Mom signed it, but she didn't see a dime. He kept it all." The room erupted. Uncle Pete coughed into his fist. A cousin muttered, "Jesus," and the priest froze mid-prayer. Eddie shot to his feet, face red as a brake light. "You're full of it, Jack. Sit down before you embarrass yourself." "Embarrass myself?" I stepped closer, mic steady. "You sold Dad's land, our land, and pocketed it. Here's the LLC. Your name's on it. Explain that." Lisa jumped up, voice shrill. "He's lying. Eddie wouldn't do that. He's a good husband." She turned to the crowd, eyes wide, playing the victim card. Mom just sat there, tears streaking her cheeks, mouthing, "Jack, stop." I didn't stop. "I've been sending Mom $300 a month for years, paid off Eddie's debts, kept this family from sinking. And last week, they locked me out of Easter like I'm some drifter. Well, I'm done. The bank account's locked too. Good luck with the mortgage now." Eddie lunged, grabbing for the mic, but I sidestepped, years of hauling engines making me quicker than his beer gut. "You bastard," he roared, swinging wild. "You're ruining everything." "Ruining?" I laughed cold and hard. "You ruined it when you sold Dad's memory for a quick buck." The crowd buzzed, some nodding, others glaring. Mom sobbed louder. "Jack, you're breaking my heart." But I turned away. I'd said my piece. I tossed the mic to the floor with a crack, walked out past the stunned faces, and didn't look back. The truck door slammed behind me, engine growling as I peeled out, leaving their chaos in the dust. They could scream all they wanted. Truth doesn't bend. Next week, they'd feel the real sting when the bills hit, and I'd be long gone, wrench in hand, building something they couldn't touch. What would you do if your kin stabbed you in the back? Fight or walk away? Tell me below. 2 weeks after I torched my bridges at St. Mary's, I stood in the middle of a rundown garage on the edge of Pontiac, the air thick with dust and the tang of old motor oil. I'd sunk $8,000, most of my savings, into this heap, a sagging steel box with a leaky roof and a sign out front that read, "For sale," until I tore it down. The F-150 sat parked outside, loaded with tools I'd scavenged from years at Big Al's. A socket set, a jack, a dented red toolbox Dad gave me when I turned 18. This wasn't just a building, it was a lifeline, a chance to claw back the dream I'd buried under 30 years of family baggage. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work, the clank of metal on metal drowning out the echoes of Eddie's curses and Mom's tears. The first few days were quiet, just me and the grind. I patched the roof with tar paper, swept out decades of grime, and hauled in a workbench I'd scored off Craigslist for $50. Then Bill showed up, gray-haired, leather-faced Bill, who'd wrenched beside me at Big Al's back in the 90s. He'd heard about the church showdown through the grapevine and rolled up in his beat-up Dodge, a six-pack of Bud under his arm. "Heard you gave 'em hell, Jack," he said, cracking a can. "About time." We spent the afternoon tearing down a rusted lift, swapping stories about carburetors and bar fights, and by sundown, he was in. Unofficial partner, no pay, just the promise of a cold one when the jobs rolled in. Midweek, the mail brought a curveball, a thin envelope with Mom's shaky handwriting scrawled across the front. I set my coffee down, the mug still warm, and slid it open. Jack, it read, I know you're angry and maybe I deserve it. Eddie messed up, but he's still your brother. I'm still your mother. We're lost without you. The house is cold. The bills are late. Come home, son. I love you. I stared at the words, waiting for the old tug of guilt to kick in, the one that used to send me running with a checkbook. It didn't come. Instead, I saw her at St. Mary's crying while Eddie raged, choosing him over me even after the truth hit the fan. I lit a match, held it to the corner of the letter, and watched it curl into ash in the sink. Love's a two-way street, Mom, I muttered. You picked your lane. By Friday, the garage had a pulse. Bill and I got the lift working, and I took my first job, a '72 Chevy Nova with a blown gasket. The guy, a grizzled vet named Hank, slapped $200 on the bench when I finished, saying, You're a straight shooter, Sullivan. I'll spread the word. That night, I drove out to a VFW hall I'd passed 100 times but never entered. Inside, a dozen guys my age, ex-Marines, factory hands, nodded me over to a table littered with empty bottles. They'd all been cut loose by someone. Wives, kids, brothers. Family's overrated, one said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against it, the beer bitter and cold, and felt a weight lift I hadn't known I was carrying. The garage wasn't much yet, just a shell with a heartbeat, but it was mine. No Eddie to leech off it, no Mom to guilt me into giving it away. I turned the Nova's keys over in my hand, the metal cool against my palm, and grinned. This was what Dad meant about a man needing a place to stand. I'd found mine, and no one could take it. Tell me what you'd build if you had to start over. Drop it below. April slipped into May, and the garage started breathing steady in Pontiac, its steel bones humming with the growl of engines and the clatter of tools. I'd fixed 6 cars since the Nova, mostly beaters from guys like Hank, vets and retirees who paid in cash and tipped with a nod. The workbench was scarred now, stained with oil and coffee rings, and Bill had claimed a corner for his old radio, crooning Merle Haggard between jobs. I'd tacked up a faded photo of Dad next to the lift, his grin frozen in '94, leaning on that Chevy Impala we'd rebuilt together. It wasn't much, this place, but it was solid. Mine in a way nothing had been since I was a kid, with grease under my nails and dreams too big for Warren. Word came trickling in about the fallout back home. Tommy dropped by one afternoon, hauling a stack of real estate listings and a grin. Your brother's in deep, Jack, he said, cracking a Coke. Banks circling Mom's house. Missed 2 payments since you cut the cord. Eddie tried selling that Silverado to cover it, but the repo man got it first. Guess Lisa's not so keen on him now. I grunted, tightening a bolt on a Ford pickup's alternator. Didn't surprise me. Eddie always spent faster than he earned, and Mom's blind spot for him was wider than Lake St. Clair. I felt a flicker of something, pity maybe, but it died quick. They'd made their bed. The final thread snapped a week later. I was locking up the garage, the sun dipping low, when my phone buzzed. A text from Lisa, of all people. Jack, Eddie's sorry. We're sorry. House is gone. Mom's with us now, but we're broke. Help us, please. Your family. I stood there, the keys cold in my hand, and read it twice. Sorry, broke, help. Same old song, just a different verse. I pictured Eddie's red face at St. Mary's, Mom's tears, Lisa's fake innocence. None of it moved me. I'd spent decades bailing them out, only to get a locked door and a sold-off legacy. I deleted the text, didn't reply. Family's a word, not a chain. You don't owe it your soul. That night, I drove out past the city limits, the F-150 rumbling over back roads until the lights faded and the stars punched through the dark. I pulled off near a stretch of woods, cut the engine, and sat with the window down, the air sharp with pine and earth. Dad used to say a man's worth isn't in what he gives away, it's in what he builds for himself. I'd given too much, too long, and got nothing but scars for it. Now with the garage, with Bill's gruff laugh and Hank's handshake, I had something real. Eddie could grovel, Mom could cry, Lisa could beg. They'd never touch this. I fired up the truck and headed home, the road stretching out like a clean slate. The phone stayed silent. No more pleas or guilt trips, and I didn't miss them. A year ago, I'd have caved, written a check, played the sucker. Not anymore. I'd walked away, not out of spite, but survival. A man's got to know when to cut the rope. The garage waited for me tomorrow, and that was enough. Maybe someday I'd wonder if I needed them back. But tonight, under the Michigan sky, I knew I didn't. I cranked the radio, let Haggard's voice fill the cab, and drove on. No regrets, no rear-view glances, just a guy who'd finally found his ground. What's your line in the sand when family turns sour? If this story resonated with you, don't just keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful stories, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, and I read every single one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.